How many of you this morning would say you're the kind of person who's just hyper aware of what's going on around you? Raise your hand. How many of you didn't even hear me ask that question? You're the kind of person who you're focused on what you're doing. You're not that aware of what's going on around you. How many of you typically see the stuff that's in front of you, and how many of you typically are blind? How many of you typically are aware of Rebecca or oblivious? Do me a favor, turn and talk to the person next to you about this for a second and confess what kind of person you are. The kind who's oblivious or the kind who's aware? The kind who sees or doesn't see? And I realize I may have just started some fights among some of the couples in the room. And that's okay. If you're a couple and you're now fighting over who's oblivious or not, Friday night, we've got a couples group for you to come on out to. It'll really be great for you. But here's the truth. Some of you are confessing a lot about your obliviousness. Here's the truth about all of us, no matter what kind of type of person you typically are, all of us are often oblivious to what God is doing around us or even wants to do within us. Many of us only get to the place with God where we believe in Him, but we don't come to the place where we have a relationship with God, where we live in the awareness of His presence and His activity throughout each day. And that's what God wants for us. I mean, have you ever wondered what God is doing in the moments when you can't see what God is doing? Has that ever been a question in your mind about what He might be up to when you're oblivious to what He's up to? And what are the dangers that come when you and I are oblivious to what God is doing around us? We're going to talk about that today, and we're picking up our story. We've been following Moses and the Israelites out of Egypt, and now they've been going through the wilderness. So for the last 6 weeks, we've been walking through the wilderness with them, learning the lessons they learned as they went. Last week when we left off, Israel had finally put Egypt behind them, hopefully once and for all, and they were on their way north now. We've got the map so you can look. On their way north, that's that line on the right, up toward the promised land. So they're coming around the side, and then they're going to turn in, and that star is where they're headed today. Along the way, and we're going to skip these stories. We don't have time to cover all the stories, but on that journey, they get attacked by 2 different kings in their nations, and God gives them victory over both of them. And then they arrive at that star, this place, present-day Jordan, and they're just at the top, the north top of the Dead Sea, near the Jordan River is where we find them. I've got a relief map that maybe helps you see. They are in the valley between a bunch of mountainous areas there at the top of the Dead Sea, settling in this lush valley, and they are so numerous that they are filling the whole valley. And there's a king who lives right near there with all of his people, the Moabites. His name is King Balak. And he sees, looking down from the mountains, Israel filling up the valley, and he is terrified because he knows he can't stand up to them. And if they decide to attack him, what's he going to do? You know, to have neighbors like this, he's afraid. So he does the only thing he thinks he can do. He tries to hire some divine intervention. So he sends an entourage of his leaders, along with a boatload of cash, to acquire the services of a seer named Balaam. Seers are supposed to have supernatural insight into what's going on around them. They are the opposite of oblivious people. They're the kind of people who are supposed to see everything and be able to see the future and even be able to influence the gods in their minds to get them to do what they want them to do. And so he sends his messengers with a boatload of cash to Balaam, and this is the message he sends along the Balaam. This is what they tell Balaam when they get to him. They tell him, "A people has come up out of Egypt. They cover the face of the land and have settled next to me. Now come, put a curse on these people because they're too powerful for me. Perhaps then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. Because I know, Balaam, whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed." I mean, that must have felt pretty flattering to Balaam to hear the king of Moab say how much power he has. And so he told the envoy there, "Okay, you guys spend the night. I will go inquire and see what message I can get." He's going to encounter the Lord through all this. He is not a prophet of God, but he's going to encounter God that night. And so God speaks to him and asks him a question to start things off. God says, "Who are these men with you?" Now, how many of you think God asked that question because God didn't actually know who the men were? Yeah. When God asks you a question, it's not because he needs the information, it's because you need to recognize something. And so he asks them, "Who are these men with you?" Because he wants Balaam to know these are mere men coming to offer you the wealth and the honor that mere men can give you. But I am the one true Almighty God. He wants Balaam to understand this from the beginning. And that puts Balaam in a pickle because he really wants the wealth and the honor that these guys are bringing him and offering him. But he's not sure he wants to get this Yahweh God angry at him. He doesn't really know God at this point, so what's he supposed to do? And the Lord gives him a clear answer there. He says, verse 12 of Numbers chapter 22, and again, you can follow along in your own Bible on the screen, or open our app and click the sermon notes. You can follow along there and take notes. But Numbers chapter 22, verse 12, God tells him clearly, "You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people," the Israelites, "because they are blessed." So Balaam went back to King Balak's envoy and broke the bad news to them. Said, "Sorry, guys, I want to, but I'm not allowed to go with you." He leaves out the part about how Israel can't be cursed because God has blessed them. He doesn't tell them that part. So when they go back to King Balak and tell him he said he can't come, Balak thinks, "Oh, I know, we're negotiating." So now he sends just a whole bunch of princes this time to demonstrate and parade all the wealth and honor that he can give to Balaam. Like imagine, I don't know how many of you have ever been in this position of having two employers fighting for you because they want to hire you, and they just keep offering you more and more benefits and money. If anybody had that experience, wouldn't it be nice? And so that's kind of where like Balaam feels like right now, because King Balak says, "Don't let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you ask me to do. Come and put a curse on these people for me." He's offering them the world. That's what he's offering them. And so Balaam tells the princes now who are meeting with him, he says, "Even if you gave me a house full of silver and gold, I can't do anything but what the Lord gives me to do," which sounds like a great answer, like he's getting it. But then he says, "But you know what? Wait for the night. Spend the night with me. I'll go ask again." Because he wants to see, is there some way he can get God, convince God, manipulate God to let him go. And so he goes in and he speaks to God, and God says this to him: "If the men have come to call you, rise, go with them, but only do what I tell you." And that sounds like permission, but it's not. God wants Balaam to understand Balaam is choosing the honor of men, and he's choosing that over God. But God gives him a very clear warning: you may only do and say what I tell you to do and say. And of course, Balaam's oblivious. He doesn't pick up on what God is saying. In his mind, he's managed to manipulate God into letting him go. And so he gets up in the morning, says, "Let's go, guys." And he gets up on his donkey, and they take off right away before God changes his mind. Balaam doesn't know God. And so he doesn't know what he's up against here. But God knows Balaam. And he knows that Balaam will do whatever it takes, including cursing Israel, in order to get the wealth and the honor that King Balak has offered him. And so God sent an angel to meet Balaam on the road to kill him. And this is the famous talking donkey story that so many of you have heard about in Sunday school or growing up, where the angel stands in the road with a sword, and Balaam, the famous seer, can't see him. The famous one who has this great insight is completely oblivious to the fact that an angel of God is standing in front of him, ready to kill him if he goes forward. Balaam can't see it, but his donkey can. His donkey can. 3 times this happens. The angel stands on the road, and the donkey sees him, but Balaam doesn't. The donkey saves his life 3 times. And what does the donkey get for it every time? A beating. Every time Balaam beats the donkey, until finally the 3rd time, the Lord gives the donkey the ability to communicate with Balaam. And this is what the donkey says to him: "Dude, am I not your donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you?" In other words, "Balaam, how dumb are you? You know I don't normally act like this, so you should have woken up to the fact that something strange must be going on if I keep avoiding going where you're trying to make me go. But Balaam was so oblivious that it took a talking donkey to wake him up and help him see that what he was doing was wrong and outside of what God wanted him to do. But then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes. He saw the angel and realized the donkey saved his life. How humiliating must that have been, that moment when he realized who was the real seer on that path, him and the donkey. And the angel told him, God's angry because he knows your heart, and he knows that you're going to go and you're planning to betray Israel and betray God. And so Balaam in that moment repented. He realized who God was a little bit more. And he repented, and he said, I'll go home. And God says, no, keep going, but only say what I tell you to say. And so Balaam kept going, and he met Balak up in the mountains that surrounded the valley. So picture, this would be the mountaintop of Mount, which one is this? Peor. And they're looking down into the valley, and just picture like the whole valley is covered with people. That's what they're seeing. And they meet up there because on these mountains, around those valleys is where King Balak and his people set up their idols and their worship centers for Baal. It's where they worship Baal. And so they meet up on the mountain. They're looking down. They can see part of the people. And Balaam tells King Balak, here's what you need to do. I need you to build 7 altars. Now, this isn't like little altars. These are huge, expensive things to build that take time to build. Up on the mountain, it says, I need you to build 7 altars, and then you're going to make the most expensive sacrifices, rams and bulls. And so they're making the most expensive sacrifices now on these really expensive to build 7 altars. And Balaam goes and talks to the Lord, and the Lord sends him back with this word. I'll just give you a little bit of his first oracle. This is what Balaam says. How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced? From the rocky peaks I see them. From the heights I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations, who can count the dust of Jacob or number even a fourth of Israel. Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my final end be like theirs. King Balak wasn't happy about that. I'm paying you to curse them, man, not to talk about how great they are or how blessed they are. And Balaam's like, I can only say what the Lord gives me to say. And so King Balak's like, all right, let's go to a different mountain. We'll try God from a different place. We'll tempt him from over there on that mountain. So they get up and go to a different mountain, now where they can see just a little bit of Israel. It's like maybe if we just break him into pieces, we can, get God to just get rid of that part of his people. So they get to another mountain, and they're looking down, 7 altars again, more sacrifices again, the whole shebang, a lot of money getting spent here to get God to do what he wants. Same result. Here's the second oracle, just a little part of it. It says in verse 19 of chapter 23 in Numbers, God is not human that he should lie, not a human being that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? I have received a command to bless. He has blessed. I cannot change it. No misfortune. Now here's the blessing. No misfortune is seen in Jacob. No misery observed in Israel. The Lord their God is among them. The shout of the king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. They have the strength of a wild ox. There is no divination against Jacob. No evil omens that can stop Israel. It will now be said of Jacob and of Israel, see what God has done. No, 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 King Balak starts yelling at him. I don't know, I picture Yosemite Sam jumping up and down when I picture him. You're supposed to be cursing them. Just be quiet if you're going to say things like that. He's like, okay, I've got one more altar. We're going to go to Mount Peor, and I've got another altar to Baal there, and we're going to try it from there and see if we can't get God to curse them from there. 7 more altars, a whole bunch more rams and bulls get sacrificed. Balaam brings back this third oracle. Again, I'm just going to give you snippets of it and tell you what the rest is. Chapter 24, verse 3, Balaam says, the prophecy of Balaam, son of Beor, the prophecy of one whose eyes see clearly. He's changing, it seems. The prophecy of one who hears the words of God, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who falls prostrate and whose eyes are opened. And then he then goes on to describe how beautiful and how blessed Israel is, and how she will have everything she needs in abundance, and how she will take her place in the land God has given her, and how nothing can stop her, and she will then be God's hand of judgment and blessing to the world. And he ends with this line. He says, "Blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those who curse you." And that's when King Balak and all of his elders and princes realized it was hopeless. There is no way he's going to be able to change God's heart. No matter how many altars he builds, no matter how many sacrifices he makes, no matter what direction he tries to come at God from, there is no way he's going to change God's heart toward his people. And so he growls at Balaam, "I would have given you a whole lot of wealth, a whole lot of honor, but the Lord has kept you back from it now. I hope you're happy. I'm not giving you a dime." And that's where the story stops. What does that tell us? Number one, think about what's happening up in the mountain there. King Balak trying to cast the shadow of death down onto the valley where the Israelites are. And the whole time down in that valley, the Israelites are getting comfortable. They are oblivious to the fact that King Balak is doing everything he can, pulling out all the stops in order to cast the shadow of death out onto them. They have no idea what he's doing. They have no idea what God is doing. Three times they tried to tempt God to change his heart toward his people. And every time, God refused. Because God's heart is faithful. Nothing can change God's heart toward his people. Nothing can get him to go back on his promises. You can throw it all at God. Everything you've got, you will not change his heart toward his people. He isn't like us. That's what he said through Balaam. He said, God's not human that he would lie, not a human being that he would change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? No. When God says he will do, he will do. Does God promise and not fulfill? No. When God promises, he fulfills his promise. No matter how many ways you come at God and no matter how much money you spend and the sacrifices you make, God's heart will not be changed. And God is powerful enough to withstand anything that tries to get him to let us go. And that's why Paul, the apostle, who went through all kinds of suffering, all kinds of pain, that stuff you and I would have no comprehension of, nothing to compare it to, and yet it never caused him to waver or doubt. That's how firmly he believed in what he wrote in Romans 8:38. He said, I am convinced neither death nor life, neither angels, not demons, neither the present, nor what happened to you in your past, nor any powers, neither heights nor depths, nor anything else in all of creation outside of us will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. That is the wondrous and comforting truth that holds us. Even when we are oblivious to God and what he's doing, he is fighting for us. And when you can't see what God is doing, when you're oblivious to it all, thick as a brick and in need of a donkey to come up and tell you, that doesn't change the fact that God is fighting for you, protecting you, preserving you, and keeping his promise. His faithful love endures forever. Do you remember the last night before Jesus was taken and crucified? He was in the upper room with the disciples. And they had no idea what was happening around them spiritually. They were oblivious to it all. So much so that, Peter, who's going to say, I will never deny you, a minute later is denying him. But in that room, in that night, when they're all oblivious, Jesus, do you remember what he said to Peter? He said, Peter, pay attention to me. He said, Satan has asked to sift all of you like wheat. Why? To prove that you don't measure up and you're not worthy of me. He's going to sift and show how you don't make the cut. You're the garbage that gets sifted out, and you're not the good stuff that stays when you sift wheat. He said, Satan has asked to sift all of you like wheat, but I have prayed for you, Peter. Now he's speaking to him individually. I have prayed for you, Peter, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, Jesus knew he was going to stumble. When you turn back, strengthen your brothers. We may be oblivious to it, but God is constantly fighting for us, fighting to protect and preserve us, rejecting all the enemy's attempts to convince him that we're not worthy of his love and his affection. All the attempts, God rejects them all. God's heart will not be changed, and nothing can separate us from his love. And that's the comfort. And some of you really need that comfort today because you think it's too late for you. You think you're too far gone. Or you've somehow had it in your mind that it's about you measuring up and that you're being acceptable enough, and it's not any of that. And you need to know that in spite of your failures and all of that, God's heart doesn't change toward us. God's promises remain toward us, and nothing separates us from that, even when we're oblivious. But now here's the warning part. God's heart may be unchangeable, but our hearts aren't. Let me show you what happened next. You're not going to like it. See, Balaam was really conflicted that day. After King Balak said, "Get out of here, I'm not giving you a dime," he really wanted that wealth. He just, the thoughts of what he could have and do and the life he could have for himself with all of that wealth, it made things really difficult. I mean, he had said he really wanted to be part of God's people. He said his eyes were opened. He said he realized God was the Almighty. He even said in one of the oracles, in chapter 23, verse 10, the second half of that verse, he said, "I want to die the death of the righteous. And may my final end be like the end of Israel, God's people." Like he really wanted, in his heart, he really wanted to die the death of a righteous person and live the life of a righteous person and belong to God. In his heart, he really wanted that. But in his flesh, he really wanted that wealth that King Balak had and everything it would bring him in this life. You know what it's like to have conflicting desires, don't you? Have your heart want one thing and your flesh, your body, want something else. Our hearts want God. We want to be faithful. I want to be counted among those who are righteous. But I also want other things that my flesh craves. And for some reason, our flesh seems to always beat our hearts. Our hearts are fickle and weak, and our flesh is so strong. Over and over, the scriptures talk about this. And Balaam's flesh won that day. You see, it turns out Balaam didn't walk away. He didn't leave. He stayed there with King Balak. And he helped him hatch a new plan to cause Israel to separate themselves from God. I imagine the conversation went something like this. He said, "Look, King Balak, we obviously can't get God to change his heart. I've tried, like I've told you, I can't. He's saying what he's saying. There's no way we can get God to change his heart toward his people. But what if we can get the people to change their hearts toward God? Worth a shot, right, King Balak?" To which he's like, "Yes, what do you have in mind?" And this is going to sound so cliche, but Balaam told him, "Get all the prettiest, the most beautiful woman you have in your nation, put them in the skimpiest clothing you can find, and just have them go walk around out near the camp of the Israelites." That's all. That's all it was. That simple. Just as simple as that. Just as simple as, let's put a bunch of TV shows out there. Let's put a bunch of movies out there. Let's put a bunch of pornography out there. Just scantily clad women, people doing things, offering cheap, free sex. Like, you got to be able to see through that, right? No. The men of Israel took the bait, and they chased the pretty Moabite women, and they engaged in sexual immorality with them. And then the Moabite women, once they had the hook into these guys, began inviting them, "Hey, come to our celebration meal we're going to have. It just happens to be up on Mount Peor at the temple to Baal, and we're going to worship Baal there." And the guys go, "Okay, I'll go. You're pretty." And they go, and they end up making vows and bowing down before Baal and worshiping Baal and covenanting themselves. They have a covenant with God. They're married to God. But they go and prostitute and adulterate themselves with the Baal of Peor. being unfaithful to God in the very place where he refused to be unfaithful to them. We've got to feel the pain of our sin when we see that. They are not the only ones who are like this. Thousands and thousands of Israelites, thousands and thousands of them turned their hearts away from God. They made covenant with Baal of Peor, all for sex. 24,000 of them died just short of God's promised land because of it. And not too long after that, when Israel did end up at war with Moab because of all this, Balak lost his life, along with all the wealth he'd accumulated, which came to nothing, was useless to him now. Nothing outside of us can separate us from God's love, from his promise. But the sin inside of us and our sinful rejection of God, that can keep us out of taking hold of his promise. And that's the problem. We're all like Balaam. We're all like Israel. Our flesh always wins out over our hearts. Something has to happen to change us. And we know God's heart won't change. Nothing will get him to go back on his promise to us. Nothing can get him to separate us, but something has to be done about our fickle hearts that so easily separate from God. I want you to rewind with me a little bit. Go back to before Balaam messed up, when he was still being faithful to God. Right after he gave his third oracle to King Balak, and Balak's like, that's it, I'm not paying you. Balaam gave him one free oracle, a fourth one, that God moved in him to share. Not for money, not for anything, just a free bonus one, because God wanted this said. And so I want to read you like the key verse from the fourth oracle, the fourth prophecy that Balaam gave before he fell. This is what he said, standing there on that mountain, looking out over Israel. Chapter 24 of Numbers, verse 17. Balaam says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter, king, will rise out of Israel. And then he goes on to talk about how this star, this scepter, this king, would crush the enemies of God's people and set them free forever. And this prophecy has two fulfillments. The near-term fulfillment is King David when he comes. But that was never complete. God's people were never completely who God was calling them to be, the agents through whom he would judge and bless the whole world. The long-term fulfillment of this prophecy is Jesus. And so in Matthew, when Jesus is born, do you remember the wise men who come from the east? What led them there? They come and they're looking and they get to Jerusalem and they say, where is the one who was born, the King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. In Revelation 22, verse 16, Jesus himself says, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of who? David. And who? The bright morning star. Jesus was the star, the scepter, the king that Balaam saw that day. The one God showed him there on the mountain that he could see just far off. The one who would come and destroy all the enemies of God's people, the enemies that make our hearts so weak and so fragile and so fickle and keep us from being faithful to God. Those are the enemies we need to be saved from. Jesus crushed those enemies, death, sin, the grave, and took the punishment we deserve for our fickle, faithless hearts. And he made it possible for you and me to truly be transformed and changed. All while we were still oblivious. Jesus gave his life for you while you were still oblivious in your sin, lost in all the mistakes you were making. He was giving his life for you, fighting for you during that time, because God knew that our hearts are fickle and we would never be able to keep the covenant. He would keep it for us and make it possible for our hearts to be transformed. That God has done everything for us. Everything for us. The wilderness life will challenge you. It'll challenge your faithfulness to God. You know that. We're all walking through this wilderness we call life. It challenges our faithfulness to God at every turn with temptation after temptation, people putting up altars everywhere and saying, hey, don't you want this? He'll give you some wealth. We'll give you, and we bite all the time. We're dumber than donkeys. And the struggles we face in this wilderness are real. But Jesus said he is praying for us, interceding for us, that when we return, after we stumble, our faith will not fail. Even through our stumbling and bumbling, that our faith will not fail, but that we'll be able to encourage one another. That same prayer he prays for Peter, I know Jesus is praying for us. That though we stumble and fail, our faith will not fail. He is fighting for us. And the struggles we face in this wilderness are so much easier to face. And the temptations are easier to turn away when we live in the confidence and the awareness of knowing that God is fighting for us. When we are not oblivious to what God is doing for us, but seeing it, it makes it so much easier for our hearts to remain faithful to him and refuse to change and love other things. This morning, I'm going to invite you to do 3 things, and team, make your way back as we get ready to spend some time praying and worshiping our God. 3 things. Number 1, ask. I have a question for you to ask yourself and God. Where am I being oblivious to God? What am I not seeing that God is trying to get me to see? Where am I being oblivious to God? What's causing that obliviousness? Take a moment. If you need to close your eyes, close your eyes. Sometimes you see better when you close them. And ask God, where am I being oblivious to you? Where am I being oblivious to what you want to show me? Number 2 is confess. What temptation is the enemy prancing in front of me to attract my heart, dancing around in its skimpy clothing? It's amazing. Money and sex are as powerful today as they were then, thousands of years ago, and it's still. But there's so many other things: respect, vengeance, power, sloth. What sidetracks your fickle heart and keeps you from being fully devoted to Jesus? What is the temptation that's dancing around your camp that you need God's help? Confess it. Don't sit there thinking, oh, I just got to try harder. Trying harder just feeds the same monster that makes you fall, your own will. This is about complete brokenness and surrender to God. Only you, God, only you can keep us from falling to temptation. Ask, confess, and then look. I'll confess, guys, lately my eyes, I'm looking at all the problems, the misery, the trouble of this world and this life, grand scale and small minutia scale in my own life. You can spend your time going through this wilderness looking at and staring at and worrying about the shadow of death that might be chasing after you, exploring the depths of the misery and trouble that this wilderness life brings. Or you can look to Jesus and allow him to change the trajectory you're in. I'm going to give you an experiment, but I don't want you to actually do it. Get on the highway and drive. And then look at the car next to you. Don't really do this because it's going to cause a problem. What will happen is you'll start to move closer and closer to that car. You will drift. You move toward what you look at. So if you're looking at the misery and all that stuff, you're going to move closer and closer to it. But if I'm looking at Jesus and not oblivious to him, but my eyes are open, I'm looking to him, then my trajectory will change. No longer sinking into this wilderness and this sea that's trying to drown me, but now I'm rising up out of it. And that trajectory difference, oh man, it changes everything about my heart. Look. Choose to spend this life in this wilderness exploring how high and how wide and how deep and how long is the love of our Savior, our King, Jesus. Let's take a few